Hello there, my name is Luciano Oliveira. I am a Brazilian attorney. I'm here in Rio de Janeiro, and today we're going to be talking about legal aspects of buying a property in Rio de Janeiro. There are so many legal aspects of buying a property, and there are some very specific ones that apply only to foreign citizens. It is too much to cover in a single video, so here we're going to highlight some examples so you understand the extent of the legal consequences of buying a property in Brazil and some of the particularities applicable to foreign citizens only. The first one is there are actually restrictions on purchasing properties by foreign citizens, but thank God those restrictions are not that many, and they are limited themselves in reach. One of them is like on rural properties. If you're going to buy a rural property in the state of Rio de Janeiro or closer to the city of Rio de Janeiro, know that there is a limit. There is a limit to the size of the rural property. There is no limit when you're buying a urban property. So if you want to buy a huge apartment or a huge house, as long as this property is considered urban, there is no limit in size. However, if you're buying a rural property, there is a limit in size, and this limit is going to vary according to the municipality. So if it is in Rio de Janeiro, the city of Rio de Janeiro is going to be one limit. If it is in a close by city, like in the countryside of the state, the limit is going to be different. And you should consult with an attorney so you know exactly what you can buy in terms of rural property. For urban properties, again, there are no limits in terms of size. However, there are the so-called terrenos de marinha. Terrenos de marinha are properties that are co-owned by a private party and the federal government. And because they are co-owned by the federal government, there are some additional taxes that you have to pay on this property, which of course is not desirable. And also you're going to have a limitation in terms of size. So it's important for you to review if the property is terreno de marinha or not. And to do so, usually you're going to look at the deed. This is information that should be showing on the deed. There are some other aspects of buying properties in Brazil by foreign citizens, but these are the main restrictions. Another legal aspect is the need for a Brazilian tax ID. When you buy a property, of course, you're going to pay the transfer tax, and you also need to pay like the property annual tax later on. So the tax ID is going to enable you to pay those taxes. You can check the description below to find out how to exactly apply and get your Brazilian tax ID without too much work. If you need professional help, we can get the Brazilian tax ID for you in no time. Just let us know. Now, in terms of taxes and fees, the transfer tax, which is the tax that you pay prior to closing, it's usually between 3 to 4% of the property value. And you also have additional closing fees related to the cartório, to the registry, which is going to handle the closing. They have something additional. You're also going to need to spend money with legalizing your personal documents through the apostille. And there is also a need for a sworn translation. Altogether, usually it's going to cost you around 4% of the property. Taxes, closing costs, and other out-of-pockets. Another legal aspect of buying a property is like the transfer of the title or the deed. This is done by the registry, which in Brazil we call cartório. The cartório handles this legal act. And this type is kind of similar to the closing in the United States, for instance. There is going to be a date, and seller and buyer is going to meet. They are going to meet in an office to have the transfer deed signed. In terms of regulations applicable specifically on foreign citizens, we have the legalization of documents. Of course, if you are Brazilian, your documents are accepted without any legalization. But if you are a foreign citizen, if you are single, for instance, you're going to need to provide a a recent birth certificate. So maybe you have one from a couple of years ago. This one is not going to work. You're going to need to issue a new one, a fresh one, and then you're going to need to have this document apostilled, or in some countries you're going to actually need to legalize at the Brazilian consulate or embassy. Just to give you examples, in the US you get the legalization done by an apostille, but in the United Arab Emirates you're going to need to take this document to Abu Dhabi. They don't have an apostille, so you need to take the document to the Brazilian embassy in Abu Dhabi, and they are going to legalize the documents for you. Another important legal aspect that is specific to foreign citizens is like when you send money to Brazil, be aware that it's not just a wire transfer that you're going to be doing. There is a lot of paperwork involved for large amounts. The money never hits the destination account automatically. Actually, the Brazilian bank is going to retain the funds for a complete audit of the transaction. So the Brazilian bank is going to ask for a copy of the contract, a copy of the deed for the property, a copy of other paperwork related, sometimes even for a copy of your tax return as well as the seller's tax return. So this is a very time-consuming bureaucratic step, and this does not apply to Brazilian citizens because Brazilian citizens, of course, they have the money in the country. You don't. So you need to factor that into the buying process and allow enough time for all of those things to be taken care. I hope this video was helpful. If you like it, follow us for more tips.